Hey, Reham, it's nice to see you've sent us another set of essays. Great. So let's get right into it. This is the one about moving to regional locations from large cities, benefits and drawbacks. Let's see what you said. Nowadays, more companies are forced to be relocated from metropolitan cities into other local districts by local authorities. Although there are many positive ramifications of this policy, the negative aspects it brings with it are quite numerous as well. All right, so what are we supposed to understand from this thesis? That there are both. Okay, hasn't asked you to take a side, and so what you've said essentially is effective. No problems. It's fine. Don't worry about it. Let's move on. The reason I kind of questioned it was because I wanted to make sure it didn't ask if the benefits outweigh the drawbacks. When it does that, then you have to take a position that's not 50-50. Here, you're okay with this because it doesn't say if it wants you to be 50-50. I mean, it kind of assumes that you will be. So this is fine. All right, let's move on and see what you said in your body paragraphs. To begin with, several environmental benefits can stem from moving more corporations outside large cities. This is largely because it would reduce the number of city dwellers that work and the number of city dwellers that work and opt to work in these corporations. Okay, I'm not really sure what that means, but let's see. This in turn would diminish the accumulation of environmentally hazardous byproducts such as plastic and poisonous exhaust emissions, which are linked to air, soil, and water pollution. To add to this, the establishment of new corporations in rural areas will create more employment opportunities and reduce the unemployment rate in these regions. Therefore, the environmental merits, along with a fair distribution of the workforce, can be seen. All right, let's talk about this a little bit, all right? So you're supposed to be talking here about the positives of moving large corporations to regional locations, right? So what have you said to us? You said it would reduce the number of city dwellers that work and opt to work in these organizations. This was the first problem I had. I didn't think that it was very clear. I think that what you're trying to say is that the number of city dwellers who work in these corporations would diminish, but you need to explain to me why. So why would there be fewer people working in these corporations? Because, I mean, if I live in the city and I work in this job, what's going to happen? Aren't I still going to continue working in this job? So it's kind of like you left a very important link here. Are you trying to tell us that they would leave this position and continue to stay in the city? That they would no longer be taking their cars to go to work within the city, but instead, maybe they'll be going outside the city? So the link wasn't clear here. Instead, what you said is that it would diminish the accumulation of environmentally hazardous byproducts, but you didn't explain this to us, so we're missing a really important piece of the puzzle here. How do you link this idea with this idea? You can't just go from point A to point G or point, H. You have to also kind of take us step by step through the rest of your thinking process so that we understand how you've reached this conclusion. Okay? Then you said that the establishment of these new corporations will create opportunities. All right, well, explain to me. Go one step further and say that people in these areas will have more opportunities to obtain jobs. So again, here the link, the leap rather wasn't so great. It's kind of like you went from point A to point C, but you're still missing point B. Okay? So just be careful with that. Make sure that you're not asking the examiner to make any sorts of leaps of logic here, but you're really guiding your reader step by step through your thinking process so that your argument can be absolutely fully understood with no miscommunication. Let's take a look at the next body paragraph. However, the enforcement of such regulations might not be advantageous to business owners. There is ample evidence that companies' relocation procedures are difficult and impractical since the termination of existing I want to say here instead, and its reestablishment in new places requires the extensive search for new employers. And you don't mean employers, you mean employees here, right here. Workplace and customers. Nevertheless, it is evident that most of the experienced and skilled professionals are centered in metropolises. In turn, you mean something totally different here. You mean IN space TURN, two different words. It will be more challenging to attract them to work in regional companies. Most rural Egyptian factories have a reduced ratio of work output in comparison to those located in the capital city. Thus, the demerits of moving companies to regional locations are clear. Okay. All right. So again, I really want you to hold your reader's hand a little more tightly. So I assumed here you meant employees. So why do we need new employees? Why? I mean, okay, obviously you need a new workplace, but why do you need new customers? So I have a question mark here and I have a question mark here. It's not clear and you haven't developed that. So if you're going to argue that this is one of the negatives, you need to explain to us why it's a negative. Okay? Now, here you then said, nevertheless, it is evident that most of the highly... Now, maybe you've explained it, but maybe the problem here is, in fact, the fact that you used the wrong linker. So when you use the wrong linking device, it's a problem with coherence and cohesion. All right. And also, in a sense, it's also a problem with vocabulary, because maybe this would have meant more sense if you had something like, this is because it is evident that most of the highly experienced and skilled professionals are centered in metropolises. Okay, and therefore we can kind of understand that, well, they're not in these rural areas. But still, I think you should have gone to the trouble of explaining that, okay? In turn, it will be more challenging to track. Yeah, so I think that, honestly, if you had changed this nevertheless, and you had made it into something that really legitimately applied to your logic, then it would have made more sense here, okay? Now, as for your example with the reduced ratio of work, what are you trying to prove to us? What are you showing us? I know that you said that it's challenging to get these people in the rural locations to work in these companies, but how does this piece of information fit into that? So again, don't ask us to kind of connect the dots for you. That's your job. You need to do that, okay? Again, it's a little bit with the logic that's missing here. So to conclude, even though benefits, I don't know about this too. Even though benefits of the metropolitan environment and rural employment sectors are possible, with translocation of companies outside large cities, the enforcement of such policies, IES, would be inconvenient to many business owners, but also would jeopardize their work productivity. Cooperation between governments and private corporations are needed to negate the possible complications related to this change. Okay, if I didn't say it already, I wanted a the here. All right, it's fine. I mean, this sentence was a little overly complicated. It's rather long, and so as you've probably figured out, I'm never really a huge fan of these long sentences because they are basically inviting incoherence, and it's just so easy to make a mistake with them that I typically advise students to avoid them. Just break it up into two sentences. You really would have been in a much better position here. So there was an error here. The rest of it was fine. I understood it. So no major problems. But I think I've been pretty clear because we've talked about this essay quite extensively. I think you should be aware at this point what some of the weaknesses were. So with that, why don't we go on to your next task? Okay, so now let's take a look at this letter. It's to your relative who is coming to visit you. Here's what you said. Dear Sarah, I am so glad you're coming to visit and I hope we have a great vacation together. Unfortunately, I won't, careful, you needed an apostrophe here. I won't be able to pick you up from the airport for work reasons. I know this might seem disappointing to you, but I've made the necessary arrangements to make it as easy as possible for you to get to my home. Once you are there, you'll find my spare home keys underneath the front door mat. So, comma, use them to unlock the door and make yourself comfortable till I arrive at night. Oh, what happened here? This should be an L. These double L here. I'll book a taxi for you to take to my place once you land. My home location will be sent to him directly, so don't worry about directing him. My house is a 2-story white building with a green fence surrounding the front yard. The property number is this. I've so much in mind to do during your stay, but as a start, we can go to dine in the yummy catering later that night. It's a Chinese restaurant renowned for its amazing cuisines, which I know you admire a lot. Admire is the wrong word here. If you wish to, we can go for a walk afterwards in the Central Park. I can't wait to meet you, my cousin. Yours. Okay. Let's see. You were supposed to explain how to get the keys to your house. You did that. That's fine. You were supposed to give directions. You didn't. You just said, don't worry about it. I'll direct the taxi driver. So while you dealt with this in a way, you didn't actually do what they've asked you to do. You were supposed to give directions. It's probably less complicated than you thought it was. You really just need to say, once you leave the main airport terminal, take the I don't know, the shuttle bus to A Street, get off there, go down Main Street and take your first right onto Park Lane or whatever. So it's very simple. They just want you to basically give directions. You didn't do that. So that's a pretty big deal. It essentially means that you did not fulfill one of the bullets. And all you need to do really is look at the band descriptors to see what it means when you don't fulfill some of the bullets. Okay, it will absolutely lower your task achievement score. You did give suggestions. Now again, the key word in this bullet is suggestions. So are you suggesting or are you simply telling the person what to do? You said we can do this. If you wish, we can do this. So this is absolutely the language of suggestion. So this was fine. The tone was very friendly. It sounded like you were talking to someone you were very comfortable with. So all that is well done. This is your big problem, okay? And unfortunately, failure to fulfill this bullet, like I said already, will lower your band score, and that's a real shame, okay? So see what you can do about that. Try to avoid this in the future, absolutely. And so since this is your last set of tasks, a lot of the stuff you're doing is very good. But there still are some areas that, if this were your test, would definitely hold you back from the score that you're probably aiming to achieve. So see if you can sign up for some more essay corrections with us. If you're finding this feedback helpful and learning from what some of your mistakes are and what's keeping you from getting the score that you need, I definitely recommend doing this. Will help you kind of overcome some of these difficulties and make sure you're fulfilling all the criteria of the band descriptors that you need to in order to get the score that you're looking for, okay? So with that, hopefully we'll see more essays from you. I'm looking forward to it. Best of luck, and I'll wait to hear from you. Good luck.